Ready, welcome everyone. Please stand for the opening prayer, and I welcome Kathleen McDonald to come up and pray with us. Welcome, Kathleen. Thank you. You too.
Thank you for having the interesting made. The Ministers Association is coming every month. Every month.
I appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathleen. We appreciate the prayer for guidance. I think we'll all appreciate that. So, and thank you for coming and sharing that with us. So please stay standard for the Council Waiata. Welcome, Councillor Gilchrist, back in time to lead us.
I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Kia ora. Please be seated. Welcome everyone. Welcome especially to our community board members, Wayne from Geraldine and Neville from Crescent Point. And I also have an apology from Stephanie McCulloch from the Temuka Community Board. Do we have any other apologies? I know Councillor Piddington's not here yet, is he? It's going to be late? Okay, perfect, thank you. So can I have a mover for the apology? Thank you, Councillor Wills, Councillor Gilchrist. Put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So move now to public forum, and we welcome Christy Phillips from the Hospitality Association. So second time in a month presenting to us. So thanks for coming along. We really appreciate you taking us up on our invite, and really interested to see what you've got to say and what's happening in the industry.
Well, thank you for inviting me. As you've heard and know, my name's Christy Phillips. I am the branch president for South Canterbury for Hospitality New Zealand. I've also sit on the national board for Hospitality New Zealand for the last 2.5 years. So we represent almost 3,000 members nationally, around 80 within our South Canterbury branch, and that goes from Temuka, Geraldine, through the Mackenzie country down to Amarama and the North Waitaki. So our membership base is not just hospitality, restaurants and bars, but we also have cafes. Accommodation sector is quite heavily involved for us as well. So that's everything from backpackers, motels to hotels. So we have a huge broad spectrum of members that from very small one-man bands to some of the big groups that we represent. Within our district, under the TCT figures for Venture Timaru, our annual tourism spend in this area, you're probably all aware, from January to April was 156 million. Within that hospitality sales made up $23 million of that spend, and that's under the food and beverage serving services. When you look at those figures this year, international spend was only $3 million, while the domestic spend was 153 million. Those figures obviously over the last 2 years have changed in their ways quite dramatically. So our association is all about supporting our members within the district here. This year, it's been a really tough year for a lot of our members, and to be fair, we haven't had a lot of social gathering that we would normally do. And one of the reasons for that is everyone is just so deep working within their businesses trying to survive. So that's been an interesting dynamic to work with a lot of owners being back on the tools and in their businesses, and just trying to keep those doors open every day. The excuse me. The other side of what we do has kept on ticking along really well, and thank you for the opportunities you give us on the advocacy side. Locally and nationally, there's just so many things happening that impact not just our industry, but so many industries that create our community. So it's been really great to be able to work with you on those. You know, I think I've sat here over dogs, smoking, gaming, all sorts of things that I never knew that I would ever have to do, and has really helped me grow in my role in that learning curve as to what our businesses are actually providing for this community. Over lockdown, there was a heap of support put through, and I can't even think about how many Zoom calls we were involved in drafting guidelines to get hospitality and accommodation businesses reopened, but open safely. Because at the end of the day, that was for us one of the key points, was not just keeping the public safe, but keeping our teams safe as well, and showing that we could have people within our venues in a health and safety point of view that kept everything moving. Without the advocacy that happened nationally in drafting those guidelines, I would hate to think what would have come out. When you're talking to owner operators, you get the practicalities, not just the high level, this would be nice, coming through from government. And what was originally decided pre-cabinet and coming out post-cabinet was really interesting, watching that in those lockdown levels. Without us, some of our bars and restaurants wouldn't have been open at all within level 2. Health was very much pushing for not to open, and we had to show that we could do that safely with the single-seated server space separated. That would have had major implications over the last year. Every time we've gone to that level 2 area, places like the Richard Pierce, the Sale, the Old Bank couldn't have opened within this community in those level 2 settings. So I think that was a big win for us, and shows that when you do engage, we can make things happen. I guess for myself, I do a lot of work within the agencies down here, liaising with them on behalf of our members or for what is happening within our area. And that's been really great. I have to say, South Canterbury is held up nationally as one of the most cooperative branches within the country with our local licensing agencies and health. So that's been really nice to be able to fly that flag. And in terms of LAP, ours was one of the smoothest in the country to go through. Some are still in the High Court. So that's been nice to be able to hang our hats on as well. At the end of the day, working with the agencies, we need to showcase that we are trying to upskill. We're trying to create a hospitality experience for everyone to come back to and repeatedly come back to, because that is what is good for our district. And when we get those visitors here once, we want to give them a reason to come back again and again and again. Focus groups that I'm involved in nationally are the health and wellbeing side, knowledge hub and training. So that's really about future-proofing our industry. And this week we started talking, I think last April, with a learning management system, and we're now just rolling that out nationally. And that's an online training tool, really short, sharp video sections. But what's really exciting about that is for our employees. It's a learning passport, and they can start tracking their journey and be able to go anywhere within the country and say, I've done this module, that module, I've got these certificates. And so again, we're coming in from that junior level or starting level and being able to create those career paths throughout the industry and throughout the country. So I'm really excited about that. I think that's got potential to be a game changer. And for each individual venue, they can really customise that to suit their venue as well. Eat, drink, play, stay. Wellington just had that festival. We're rolling out gift cards throughout the country as well for all our members that choose to sign up to that. So that would be something, if you do see it coming out, I'd highly recommend either getting one for yourselves or for someone else, passing a gift card through. And that is going to mean that it's not just tied to one particular venue. If you want to send that voucher to someone in the North Island, in Queenstown, then they'll be able to spend that at any Hospitality New Zealand member that's signed up for the Eat, Drink, Play, Stay. So again, creating that national opportunity and means that for people outside our district, they can start sending their friends and family into our local establishments. Kiwi Access is another flagship for Hospitality New Zealand, and Sale Supply of Alcohol Act is considered one of the only acceptable forms of ID. That has now gone through a big change in terms of not just being used to show that you're 18, but actually where our new markets are coming through are in aged care or people that have lost their licence for a medical reason, and through the restorative justice and prison system as well for people that need ID to be able to open bank accounts. It's now accepted by DIA as cutting edge and has been future-proofed in terms of the style of the card. We've had some people from the Blind Association that for the first time ever have been able to field their birth date with the braille that's been put on there. So that again is just stepping forward into more of a national identity card coming through. So that is potentially something that will change the game for us down the track as well. I guess I'm usually one doing the talking when I come in here. So if there are questions about what we do, I really open the floor to them. I may have answers. Otherwise, I'll send them back to National Office and email them out.
Thanks, Christy. If you had one wish from central government as far as more enabling policy, what would that be?
From central government?
Yeah, we'll go to council next.
I think consistency is a really important thing coming through, because we're getting so many inconsistent messages coming out from central government when it comes to liquor licensing, Airbnb, gaming. Everyone's got their own take on it, but there's no consistency throughout the country. So it would be great to have one central government figure that says this is how it's going to be, that we can all work to, and makes it a fair and level playing field for us.
Yeah, cool. And like many industries, hospitality has been affected by immigration policy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're talking to the minister, but through all the channels that we can get to. I was on an MB INZ Hui just the other week, where we had people from top of the north to bottom of the south, from small groups to big groups, just trying to give them the real life examples of what's happening. And we're really just saying, yes, absolutely, we have to upskill New Zealanders, and that's been part of the plan for a long time, but we can't just turn the tap off either. We can't have a long-term solution on immigration policy without actually having some short to medium term stopgaps. And I mean, the biggest thing I think we're asking for is not to open the floodgates, but to let the people that are here work. And if they want to work, let them work all the hours that they want to work. So whether it's students or holiday visas or the essential skills, make it easy for people to transfer employers, and also to take some of the onus off that it's an even relationship. I think what they're trying to bring through with the accredited employers is going to make things difficult for smaller operators coming forward. So yeah, the people that are here, let them work.
More red tape coming. Councillor Booth.
I guess I was just thinking about the industry itself. Is it sort of like a growing industry, like year on year?
Yeah, look, there are parts that are growing really well. And I think down here, whenever I've been contacted by the Timaru Herald, they always say, is there anything you'd like to add? So yes, can you please thank the South Canterbury community for the support that they actually give us? Because that's been a massive boon, I suppose, for our industry. But some parts are really, really struggling, and some are just ticking along, doing what they do, but they're doing it on less hours. Or they're having to, I mean, everyone's having to pivot and readjust some of their ways of working. The industry itself, I think, is growing. Our membership base is growing because people are realising that they need that support and backup. They can't just do all of it alone. But some of the ways that we're working are starting to change.
So you're sort of recognising that perhaps there's a transformation within the industry, as in how you recruit your people and how you retain your people.
Yeah, absolutely. And good operators have always recognised that to start with. And I think people are starting to, it's becoming more common for employees to start moving into shareholderships, and people are retaining their employees with ownership or other forms of profit sharing in that way. But at the same token, I think we're seeing a lot of smaller operators being gobbled up by bigger groups, and particularly in the cities, I think we're going to lose some of that owner-operator familiarity people have, potentially. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Booth. Any other questions? And then what about council as far as enabling? You said we're pretty much perfect.
I said we're upheld as a flagship, but there's always room.
Anything you think we should be doing better? I guess feeding into the likes of the City Hub and some of those sort of things that is going to affect hospitality moving forward.
Yep, I think sometimes hospitality is an afterthought in some of those groups, and I've only been into some of those meetings because I've been dragged along by someone else, and then they're like, "Oh, it's good you're here." So we do get, and that happens at ARA as well. We are a little bit of forgotten in that regard, considering how much we are a part of the experience when people come. The feedback I get quite regularly is transparency around what our licensing fees are paid for, what our food for fees, how they're actually put together. Is something that I do get asked for, so maybe we could sit down, Paul, or something at some stage and just go, this is that breakdowns and allocations. I know in Wellington that some of the high-risk licenses are going up by $1,000 to $2,000 if it gets put through next week. So there's a bit of controversy around that. But also new businesses coming to town, that's when they need the most support, and they often don't know that there's organisations like ours available to help them with their food control, with their employment agreements, with putting their licence together. So even just being able to stick our website link into the licensing information area, I think would be helpful for a new business. So should they wish for support, we're available. Things like that would hopefully be quite simple. But when people start, we want them to start well and not be caught out by some of the, as you say, red tape that's around.
Cool. Any further questions, Sam? No, thanks, Chrissy. Really appreciate that.
No worries.
Thank you.
That's okay.
No worries. Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay. Quite exciting. Alrighty, thanks, Christy. Moving on now. Any urgent business? We've made aware matters of minor nature. I'd just like to maybe suggest that we just have a quick discussion around Three Waters advertising some of the commentary that's floating around the resignation at the moment, so I'm comfortable to move that. Can I have a seconder that we put that on for discussion? Councillor Gilchrist, everyone comfortable with that? All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So put that in at the bottom, number 11. So now moving to conflicts of interest. None. Confirmation of minutes. So we go to 7.1, and that's on page 6. Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Oliver. Motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Moving now to page 16, minutes 7.2 of 31st of May. Have a mover for that. Councillor Burt, Councillor Gilchrist. Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Item 8.1. Take that as read. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wills. Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. Page 47, 8.2. Functions attended by the CE. Councillor Lyon, you happy to move that? Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly, thank you. Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. Now we move to reports, 9.1, and we're on page 49. Let's catch up. There we go. Fixing of the common seal. Can I have a move for that? Councillor Gilchrist, Councillor Burt. Quick today, Tamuka. Put the motion to the floor. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Now to 9.2, which is Otop, and we welcome Lucy to come up and talk with us. And that's on page 51. Thanks, Lucy. Thank you for coming and presenting.
No problem. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present Otop Report for 2020. I'm sure you've all read it carefully, so I won't go through it in detail. So as you can see, it was a pretty challenging year for Otop, particularly with moving from the planning through Plan Change 7 to implementation, coupled with COVID, missing a few meetings, and also having a pretty short list of people around the table. We had 3 people leave the committee, which weren't replaced because of the terms of reference refresh process. That kind of dragged our year out, I suppose. So we've battled with a bit of direction as to what it is exactly we were supposed to be doing. So it was pretty tricky, but on a positive note, we successfully supported the establishment of the Catchment Collective for South Canterbury, which was all financed by yourselves and the other district councils and Environment Canterbury, so they could get underway with establishing themselves as a legal entity and go after some national funding, which they did. Are still working away, and they've got their first AGM tomorrow, so that's pretty exciting to see some groundwork actually happening, in spite of all the unrest and the shifting goalposts they feel are around them. So that's really good. So that's a definite highlight of our year, I think. The continued biodiversity work throughout the zone shows that there is that desire to make things happen, but it all takes money. And it does, the immediate steps funding doesn't go very far, and as I understand it, that has changed in the long-term plan. So that's going to make that more difficult for us to support, I suppose. So we are in the process of trying to redefine ourselves. Hopefully we've got some new members pretty shortly, and we can get underway with making some things happen. But yeah, supporting the ground up stuff is the way you get wins in this game, I think. More meetings doesn't do that, as you all know. So yeah, pretty keen to get that underway. Yeah. So anyone's got any questions, happy to take them if I can answer them, or Councillor Gilchrist, I'm sure can answer them as well.
Put on the spot. Councillor Gilchrist.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say to thank you, actually, Lucy, for your great leadership. You have had a very challenging time. And I'm entirely aware of your challenges, but you've done a really good job, I think, steering the remaining members of the committee through. And I think you're right. I think that we should have a really exciting year ahead now. I think we've lost some of the things that were holding us back a little bit, And hopefully with some a bit of new direction, we can actually get on and do a lot of that gumboot stuff, which we'd been wanting to do. And I think the Catchment Collective is a really exciting addition to the area, and a huge amount of work's gone into that. And I think that we'll be able to work really closely with them to support them. So thank you so much for your great leadership and cheering.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councillor Burt.
Yes, so my understanding, IMS funding is changed. It's quite different, but it actually gives you your own autonomy to deal with money. So you got 50 in the first year, going up to 75 to 100, and it will be left to you to make decisions around that. So in fact, it should make life a wee bit easier for you to land some of
Not
those
quite
things.
so many boxes to take.
That's right, exactly. You're right.
So that's good.
No, a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'd like to echo Councillor Gilchrist's words around your leadership. It would have been quite easy for you. I know you had some challenges to walk away, but you haven't, which shows true leadership. And I think, you know, with the conversations that I've had with you and the information you've shared with the other mayors as well, I think, you know, we're very supportive of the direction. I know there's a lot of water yet to go under the bridge, but I think, you know, with the appointments that are about to be made, I think that's really positive. And I think one of the key things is that as a council, we've got to remember this is our committee, and that it's important that we take ownership, and we shouldn't just see it as you know, a rural issue. I think and I like where you're trying to take this as far as, you know, that support the ground up initiatives, but also education. And I think there's some really cool things that we can do to just highlight what are some of the urban issues as well, because it's not just the rural, it's both. So I think there's some huge opportunities for us to support it a lot better. And I think you've certainly put that challenge to us, and I think we need to take that up. So thank you. And really appreciate any other questions, team? Any? No? Cool.
Right.
Thanks, Lucy. So Councillor Gilchrist, you'd like to move that report? Cool. Councillor Burt, put the motion to the floor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we move now to item 55, which is the adoption. And at the 11th hour, audit have given us some challenges. Peter, would you like to speak to that? briefly?
Yes, so through you, your worship, yes, literally at the 11th hour, auditor still deliberating on an issue of presentation around the capital work program and the presentation of the 90%. So that those discussions are commenced at the 11th hour. We're waiting imminently for audit to revert on what their position will be on that. But until they advise us what it is, we would advise your worship that the meeting is adjourned and we reconvene once they have given us the direction about their view on the presentation of this capital work program. So
this has literally come at 2 o'clock today. Yeah, Councillor Booth.
it's the 90% issue versus the 100% and how that's presented in terms of across. So it's really because we present that in a number of areas. We present it in the individual group activities in the long-term plan, and we present it in the funding impact statements, and also it's in a consolidated way, it's presented in the financial statements as well. And it's the presentation of those across those three segments, if you like, and how they're reconciled for us to show that we are the assumption of 90% delivery. Yeah, no, I think they're comfortable about our delivery of 90%. It's how we've shown how we're going to do that, because when we present the individual activity statements, we show 100% of the work on the basis that we don't know from here out to 10 years exactly which part of that work, the 90% that'll be delivered. Now, some projects will be delivered, Downlands, Pariora, they're already up and underway. Other projects, Stick, Theatre Royal, they'd be delivered because you can't deliver 90% of them. But it's once you get down into the latter years of that program, which are the projects. And so we didn't identify specific projects. We said the assumption is that 90%, it might be some renewals that aren't delivered. And it's that issue that there at the moment that the audit director has raised with us about the presentation of those.
And this, look, I'd been talked to the auditor last week and had a surety that there was no issues, and this has literally come in the last hour today. Councillor Wills.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just I suppose that's where I've got some concern around last minute, 2 o'clock today, and yet we got in recourse to be able to deal with this through their system, because here we are today sitting in council and the last minute they drop this on us. I think it's quite unprofessional, to be honest. And or has there been a delay process through our own feeding back information to them?
No, look, with this one, this is just something they've literally decided to pick up on, and it was literally in the last hour, wasn't it? Yeah, so
a couple of hours maybe now.
Yeah.
I suppose it's 3:30.
I suppose it's just needs to be noted on our end that we're very disappointed in their professionalism about handling this, just coming into a full council meeting.
yeah, no, I
Doesn't very
totally
well.
agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
Councillor Bennington.
Just through to you, B, have we presented it in a different way that we have in the past? The second part of that question, are we presenting it differently to our neighbours? Why suddenly
Yeah, well,
at 5 to 2 do they decide they don't like the look of it?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. No, look, we took what was presented in the consultation document and carried it through into the LTP. So from our point of view, we think it's consistent with what we said in the consultation document and what we presented, because one of the issues the auditors raised was, and it was raised across the country, they were going to test the doability of capital programs. And so we looked at it and said our doability, if you look at our history today, here's a full program, but if you want us to deliver, if you like, in order to deliver a full program, you've got to have some redundancy, because if a program is stalled or delayed for some reason, you want another piece of work you can go and pick up and carry on doing. And we presented that position, and we were pretty comfortable because there was this got quite some thorough probing at the consultation document stage, and we thought that it had been cleared then. So for it to now emerge at this point is, I suppose, we see it as a presentation issue, but we don't see it as a new issue. So we are working our way through it as fast as we can.
Mr. Harper.
And to answer, why is it now? This is the first time we've done the 90 percentile. So our financial advisors suggested this is one way of giving surety that of the 90% rather than the 100%, because there's always things that you can stumble on. And also compared to our neighbours don't do this because it's a new concept and they're picking at it. They may well look at how we go with that. And the other one is there are other councils, and I've seen another CD document where the doability of the work program is an emphasis of matter. So, the audit's sort of been tagged to say to people, we don't think that this is doable. We haven't got that. It's been accepted in the CD that it is doable. It's just a matter of this presentation and how you present it rather than what you're actually doing.
Councillor Booth.
are there any statutory things that we need to consider? It's like the last day of June. Do we have to have this done by the end of this month?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. The chief executive is on the phone now to the auditor. Totally aware of those deadlines, which is the end of the month. Councillor Bird.
I just want to reiterate the fact that we talked to the auditor and audit and risk, and this wasn't flagged, but there was an element of the fact that right through this, the Auditor General through every single council was putting a really deep dive look into a lot more elements of what the CD was asking, or we were saying that we could achieve, and one of them was our ability to deliver that program. We haven't ever been there in the past at this level, and that might be an element to that, but I don't think it's insurmountable. It'll be just a matter of presentation, I'm hoping.
Yeah, it is, and it's not that I don't agree with the 90%.
That's
it's,
right. Yeah, and
what
so,
10% aren't we delivering?
That's right.
Yeah,
and I mean, yeah, I think we should land it.
I like your optimism. But so while we're waiting, and the plan is to land it today, but we're not 100% sure at this point. So what we might do is just jump down to mine and nature, and then at that point we'll just adjourn the meeting, and then we'll just see where we're at in regard to what we've heard from audit. Yeah, and we can advise after. Are you comfortable with that? Unless there's anything else you want to, it's probably not worth discussing unless we.
Not unless there's any other questions on the report, Your Worship, but it's,
Yeah,
it's customer
is it, yeah,
standard stuff.
yeah. Is there anything, just to gauge, is there any questions that were arising since the draft effectively a few weeks ago? Is there any questions that anyone wanted to put to the team while we're kicking tires? Councillor Parker.
Just one question around the instalment dates. I thought we had a discussion about moving that one away from Christmas.
Which date, sorry,
The instalment dates.
as far as rates.
Yeah, so I thought we had a discussion as council that we were going to try to push those dates around a little bit to move it away from Christmas. I do recall sitting in the chamber talking about it.
What date does it land on the 20th
20th.
of December? Merry Christmas.
Mhm.
Um,
Just a minor
people
thing,
do
but
have the options. Of,
yeah, I
DVDs and
understand that,
stuff,
but I
but-
thought we did have a discussion that was going to look at trying to push that away.
Yeah, no, I can't call. Does not offhand, Mark, you don't have any.
I can't recall either, but it's probably about late for this year, but certainly can be looked at in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key things was to push for that DD for people to pay through automatic payment.
Could I suggest, Your
Mr.
Worship,
Harper,
that's
yes.
a very good item to put in the rating review that you've signalled in the next 2 years, right?
Suppose.
How do people pay and when do they pay? Maybe we should just put that on the list of one of those items that you will look at.
Yeah, that's fine. Cool. Joan, have you had to pick that up in the minutes? That's great. Yep. No, totally. Oh, no, but it needs to be in that piece of work, I think. Councillor Booth.
A couple of questions.
Yep.
Initially, the first one was around the unbalanced budget and just wondering whether that was normal course.
Yep.
To do, and there was some explanation of that later in the report. I'm on page.
I think it's on.
Discussion. It's noted in the headline at item 5 in the recommendations, and then if you go down to let's see, page 57, unbalanced. So it didn't talk a lot about unbalanced, it talked about balanced budgets where you are spending less than you are.
Yeah.
Or you're balancing the amount of money that you're taking from the ratepayer and ensuring that you're spending that within a certain criteria.
Yeah, I had the same question. Is there anyone? Mr. Harper.
I can help answer that. The
Thank you.
law requires the council to have a balanced budget, and by implication, that's every year. We have 1 year in the 10 years that is not balanced because of the explanation that's there. From what I recall previously, we always have an unbalanced budget somewhere in the process. And so you have to resolve, the law says you have to have one unless you resolve otherwise. So you have to resolve where there's 1 year of unbalance. We've noted that it's 1 year, it's not every year, and it's just one of those accounting things in cash flow management. That's just how it's turned out on this occasion.
And is that 2024 where there's a deficit of a certain amount?
Year 3, I feel.
Right. Okay.
And it's revolving around district planning, but it means the bottom line is not balanced like it is in the other 9 years. You have to resolve it, that's okay. And you know about it and you determine that's one.
Okay. I guess my second question was around the Kotahi, Waka Kotahi funding, the shortfall in that, and the fact that we've just signed, let some long-term contracts out for road maintenance. Does that mean that they will be affected, or does that mean we have to say the overall spending of say 40 million with FH for a period of time during that long-term plan. Then we find out we've got a 16.9 reduction in funding. Now, does that mean we're locked into spending that amount of money, or is that all considered in here?
You okay with that one? Did you hear the question, Andrew?
Basically, with the road maintenance contract, the basic maintenance is covered in the current budget, so we have sufficient funding for that. Where the expenditure is less than what we'd like is more in the renewals type area, which is discretionary spending. So there is no issues in that. So as far as meeting the contract requirements and delivering the level of service that we are indicating in LTP, we will continue to do that.
But it's that additional work.
And there's quite a few unit rates in the contract for the likes of rehabilitation. So we just don't do as much. That doesn't affect the contract.
Yes, so the rates negotiated.
Yes.
We're just not confirming the work.
And also there could be a difference in the amount of work that is resealed, right? And that's just been let, and that's allowable under the contract as well. Yep. So there's no contractual issues with where we're at all, because you have to allow for that, because it's one of the options, that one of the eventualities that could have happened, and it has.
Cool.
So just going back to that, the unbalanced part in the year 3, what is actually the main contributor to that?
Well, I mean, I guess in terms of, I'm not the financial expert, obviously, but in terms of the explanation in the report, it's around the change, because the district plan funding was loan funded. I understand the district plan review was loan funded. So because that's coming out of that situation, it leads to and because it's a sizable chunk, it leads to an unbalanced budget in that circumstance. But probably the finance gurus would give a much better explanation on that.
So is that instead of consultants?
No,
the project itself was loan funded rather than rates funded.
Yes.
That was what was planned out. Yeah. Whether that plays out, don't know. And I guess the other aspect of the unbalanced budget is we've actually reverted to a balanced budget for this LTP. I think last LTP all years were balanced budget, unbalanced. So it's been a change in practice to go to a balanced budget pretty much across the whole 10 years.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Any other further questions in regard to those items that we can't sign off? That's cool. We'll move. Thanks, Tim, and feel free to just stay there if you like. We'll just have a quick discussion around the Three Waters advertising campaign, the quality of the advertising from DIA. Obviously, there's been a lot of media attention across the country. Compatriot down south has put out a press release around their concerns from Waimate with a report to back that up. But I just thought I'd give everyone the opportunity to perhaps voice their thoughts on the current stance, bearing in mind that we still have, over the next day, some releases coming, and what they will look like, who knows? But it would be great to get your thoughts on where we are now and any concerns potentially individual councillors have with the process. Councillor Booth.
Actually, I was just looking for your information on the hub. Ash, I can't find it in regards to all the Three Waters stuff. Is that sort of come down?
No, it should be all there.
I'm just trying. Well, I might as well start.
Yeah, go for it, Councillor
Booth. Well, yeah, look, I'm quite concerned about the whole process, and it's like the central government has created a narrative and they're in control of this whole process, it would appear, without due consideration. of the local districts and the impacts. They seem to be regardless of what we think, and they seem to just be it's like operating like a steamroller, and they just simply want to implement their cause one way or the other. I see there's some comments from the Waimea Council today about their concerns, and it's certainly not transparent. I'm concerned that we've trusted the DIA to do the right thing. They've had control of all the information. They've engaged WICS, who have then analysed that information based around whatever scope they've been told to by DIA. The narrative is controlled by that group, and anyone asking or doing any reviews or reports on the impacts or peer reviews has to take the information that they've been given as gospel via DIA and WICS. We've not had any independent analysis of our own RFI, which I feel like we should have done ourselves. So as we actually knew and we're working in an informed area around actually the condition of our assets that we have, and not being told that we need to spend $1.2 billion in the next 20 or 30 years on infrastructure, when we know that our infrastructure is in good nick and we have been doing the right thing, unlike some other perhaps councils around the area. And I feel it's just a whitewash. We're simply passengers. So I'm very concerned about that and the impact it's going to have on our council.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Other elected members, and sorry, Wayne and Neville, happy to hear from you if you want to give a community perspective. You're more than welcome to jump in the conversation. Councillor Burt.
I'll just reiterate the fact that when we went to the conference in Wellington, I did my time trying to figure out who was controlling the narrative. I think you've summed it up pretty well. The question at the end of the day, when we had Adamata Arawai, our regulatory agency, one of the members from there, it wasn't Bill Bayfield, but it was Tuaisi, I think, and I asked the question, what did central government tell you to do in terms of resourcing your organisation? In other words, it was framed, are you doing it as if they're going to take the order off all the TAs? And the answer was yes. So I think that, from there, there's a certain amount of predetermination about this whole process, and that ad in the paper serves to undermine everything that we've been told to do by embargoing our own, I suppose, approach to media around this whole thing.
Thank you, Councillor Burt. Councillor Booth.
During the same meeting in Wellington, I spoke to another council, and they actually did do some work on it in their long-term plan consultation, and it came back with a very resounding no, don't touch our water.
What council was that, Councillor Booth?
I can't recall.
Can't remember, yeah. Yeah, look, I think we're certainly not alone across the country, especially across Canterbury, that a lot of the Canterbury councils are consistent with the view that the case for change hasn't been presented at this point. And I just see we're going to get some information today, embargoed till tomorrow, which will present the dashboards. How much information is coming with that? Who knows? And is that going to be enough for us to push back on their data, or perhaps they present a very credible case for change? But for me, it's bigger than this. It's the start of and this is probably the biggest reform since '89. For those in the room that still remember it, anyone from Jordan, just having you on. So, you know, we've got to be careful what we wish for here, and, you know, Three Waters, what's going to follow. You know, for me, I got into this because I wanted to provide more for our community as opposed to less. And, you know, how can we do that on a, you know, when we've got less capability and less capacity within our existing structure. So some challenges. I'm sure they'll give us all the great information we want to hear over the next 24 hours. Councillor Burt.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, the Ranson report, you only have to turn a few pages to establish very quickly that the whole thing is predicated on central government, on local government reform. And there's some very, very far-reaching implications for local government, or, you know, especially around who's going to control building regulation and what have you. And if it's supposed to free up the intention of making things easier for building, you know, some of the implications, I think, around the environmental aspects and hoops that people are going to jump through might change that perspective very quickly.
Yeah, I personally like to see some reform about political parties every 3 years promising us infrastructure projects across the country and then not delivering. That's my own view, of course, not a view of council. Anyone else before we move on? Any wonderful news from Chief Executive?
No, we might just want to adjourn briefly if I can take some advice from officers before I advise further back.
Okay, cool. So we'll look to adjourn. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Wills, all those in favour? You go, Councillor Wills, Councillor Oliver. Thanks.